have Abby Collins, who will be reading their paper titled Leone, JoJo, Generational Trauma and Storytelling. And Abby, let me give you a presentation.
While that is going on, I would just like to thank the MFGC community for letting me be part of this 50th anniversary celebration, final or not. I was honored to be part of this storied history, and I will never forget this experience for the rest of my life. Also, shout out to my dad in the audience. He supported me throughout all this, and he's filming this, so for like mom, so woohoo. Anyways, ready? Yeah, let's start. In Sing Unburied Sing, trauma is the reason why Mother Leone and son Jojo are the way that they are. Leone was the pinnacle of a perfect family until tragedy affected her. And in turn, it affected Jojo. And yet, due to their unique circumstances, which are discussed in the full version of this paper, they are unable to move past their trauma, causing further harm to themselves. Again, in the full version of this paper, I discuss in more detail why exactly they can't tell their story and use their trauma, although it is covered somewhat in there. But for now, let's take some parallels between their relationship and the symptoms of generational trauma and PTSD. Next slide. For many African American families, the conditions of generational trauma will be ever present in their lives. Generational trauma can be passed down in various different ways, according to Marilyn Doucette in her paper, Generational Trauma, Attachment, and Spiritual/Religious Interventions. Again, this can be seen in the full slide above you right now, and it's more focused on the full version of this essay. But some examples I've noticed when Jojo and Leone's relationships stand out particularly well to be included here. One method is passing it down via parental behaviors, which should be clearly seen to be affecting Jojo, especially when it comes to Leone's treatment of Kayla. When she insists on making a potion to heal Kayla that almost killed Jojo before, Jojo is visibly shaken and makes her vomit out the medicine to save her, as Jesslyn Ward described in page 118 of Sing Unburied Sing. Kayla, in turn, is much more attached to Jojo as a guardian figure because of incidents like these throughout the book. Jojo, in general, is very affected by Leone's lack of care towards them, but this moment in particular is a good summary of their relationship that contributes to Jojo's mental state. Next slide. When Leone is not on drugs, she shows symptoms of PTSD, such as those defined by Mary Doucette on page 9 of the article, which include, quote, emotional numbing, sadness, shame, anger, aggression, helplessness, depression, panic, and acute symptoms of anxiety. Ain't that relatable? Anyways, as you can probably gather from the full quote, she is anxious, filled with anger and suffering about Gibbon's death. Specifically figuring Kayla, as she insists on calling Kayla, for her resemblance to Michael and taking her anger out on her for not feeling the same idyllic attachment towards her. Next slide. This passes on to Jojo at the end of the book, when he describes he understands what his mom was feeling, as you can see from the full quote on this slide. Quote, why she slapped, comma, why she ran, comma, I feel a little bit of it too. An itching in my hands, a kicking of my feet, a fluttering in the middle of my chest, end quote. A feeling that does not go away until Jojo sleeps. As Ward describes in page 279 of Sing Unburied Sing, he is inheriting those feelings that Leone felt and understand why he feels that way. Now, stories in this universe allow clarity and the ability to cope. And if you ever talk to a therapist, read to a story, it mirrors real life as well. Listing some examples from the narrative, we can see this in spades. Pa tells a story to Jojo and feels more at peace afterwards. Kayla calms the ghost, telling them that the reason they should quote-unquote go home is that there's no use dwelling on the past. The reason our ghosts are here in the first place is because their stories, indicated in the narrative as an analog of their traumatic experiences, are anchoring them to this world, as Ward identifies on page 282 to 285. With that connection between story and quote-unquote venting, for lack of a proper scientific term, you guys can laugh if you want, I don't judge, it becomes much more apparent that both Leone and Jojo never exactly tell their story to anyone within the narrative. While we know how Pop feels about the situation because he tells his enriching stories to Jojo, and Mam tells her story to Jojo and Leone on her deathbed, the two people with prominent chapter narration, because Kayla's still a toddler, who don't tell stories, Leone and Jojo, are the ones who are worse off. Next slide. Safe to say, Leonie and JoJo have a complicated relationship. Both stem from trauma gained and passed down, and as the full paper elaborates on, unable to tell their story to soften the blow. So why should we care? In many cases, this is a mental health epidemic, one spread by the lack of mental health literacy. As Anthony F. Jorm explains in the first page of his article, Mental Health Literacy, fitting name, the concept involves, quote, the knowledge that is linked to the possibility of action to benefit one's mental health, or own mental health, or that of others, end quote. This is further supported by Megan Schwartzfager, who also argues on page 316 in her appropriately named article, Ain't No More Stories For You Here, that the book is about the, quote, intergenerationality, end quote, of trauma, and that, quote, their ultimate redemption comes from acknowledging and narrativizing their violent experiences, end quote. Basically, JoJo and Leonie are unaware of their ability to tell their story to ease their burden, or they are aware, but their anxiety and fears prevent them from having the courage to try. But like Pop, Mayim, and Rishi, telling their story would allow for better mental health overall, unchaining their spirits from the tree and taking their first steps to rest in peace. Thank you.